So we are here today to talk about Throuples,
also known as triads.
Oh, and also the psychology and science behind polyamory.
And like this is a growing trend in relationships. 3 people in a committed relationship is called a throuple. And so we're going to talk about the psychological and scientific research around how it works, whether it's good or bad, laws,
how society sees it. Even I have a lot of studies on like how that view from society impacts people, and then also sorry, we're both so excited.
And we're going to be talking about hunter-gatherers for sure, let me tell you that.
I was going to say also just some actual facts and stats that the newer research has found when comparing monogamous relationships to, in particular, consensual non-monogamous relationships.
Okay, so
I wanted to start with a little disclaimer.
Wow, we're actually like screaming. Okay, go. Yeah.
And that is, I know like these topics can be sensitive. You know, I like to have little disclaimers. It's all love here. Like
but I also sometimes am like, no, like if people need to understand that I am joking, and I feel people do, I feel like people do get that I joke, and I'm like, I might drag throuples through hell.
Sure,
I'm
but
kidding.
No, we're actually
I'm
not
kidding.
going to.
I'm already kidding. And just like, no, I'm just saying like, I know you mean about a disclaimer, but I hope people get the sentiment of our podcast being like,
yeah,
you know.
fine. And all I'll say is like we are queer and have lots of friends who are in different forms of relationships. We have hetero friends even who are in straight relationships. We've known people in throuples. We've known people in quadruples.
Wait, so you're like so worried that what? We're going to drag the hell out of throuples?
No. I'm not actually.
What's your disclaimer?
The disclaimer is just like everything we're saying is out of just interest. And if we did happen to say something that somebody found offensive, or if our research isn't as like, I think we've done some like good research, but if it's not as like, what would you say, like big or as...
Because if there's anyone who's going to come for us, it's the polyamory community. Let me tell you that there's a lot of different words.
And this is based off of one comment we got, but when we did something
Shit. Okay, wow, I'm actually canceled.
No, when we did something on fetishes, somebody who was like well-meaning and just wanting to educate us, like I was like, oh, did we say something wrong?
And we did.
No, I don't know. It's obviously a topic that lots of people can be
passionate
passionate
said someone
about.
said something.
So someone sent us an email
And
that
said,
was like, it found this podcast a little problematic. Here's why.
What was the reason?
Well, I don't remember now. And they were very kind. And it was just like, maybe you should have brought an expert on to talk, or someone who like knows or has a specific fetishes. Anyway.
A polyamory expert. Now that is a funny LinkedIn.
Okay, here we are. We're getting into it now. I'm sorry for the big disclaimer.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start? I want to start with polygamy is not polyamory as well. And I just want to clarify, we're mostly in my research is on polyamory, which is when both partners in a relationship or multiple people can all also have other relationships, whether sexual, intimate, romantic.
Wait, what? All my research from Salt Lake City is full polygamy.
Well, polygamy is typically when like the man has many wives.
No, I was joking.
Okay.
I know that. We're not talking about that, but like, I guess maybe we could do another episode on that. But okay, I feel like you're talking a lot more about polyamory and I'm talking more about throuples.
You start at throuples. Some of my research touches on both. Okay. So yeah.
So throuples.
You're being very
competitive.
Yeah.
Combative. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're because we're on a Joe Rogan podcast. All of a sudden, things are going to go down.
Stop saying that name.
So a throuple, not to be mistaken for an open relationship, is when 3 people, and not to be mistaken for a threesome, is a balanced, consensual, committed relationship between 3 people. So polyamory goes like you could be in a throuple and not be polyamorous outside of that, in the sense that you are a closed throuple.
It would be a committed group of 3 people who are like presumably equally romantically involved and sexually involved with both.
And they could
partners.
be closed, like but I want to go through some other polyamory terms because they're amazing.
Okay.
So there's a quad, which you can guess is 4 people.
A part of your leg.
4 people in a committed relationship with each other. So it just like keeps going. I guess there could be like a cinco and there could be 5 of them. I don't know.
A cinco.
But actually, no. Then you get to a polycule, which is a network of individuals who are all in relationships with each other.
Yeah.
And I've heard a lot of like funny jokes on comedy podcasts about like Brooklyn polycules. And I've always been like, what are they talking about? Now I get it. Kitchen table polyamory is a network of individuals who are in relationships with each other. If someone new is brought into this dynamic, they have to be like generally good enough to get along with the rest of the group in a theory to feel comfortable sitting together at a large kitchen table. So it's like kitchen table polyamory. Like you could have this like big group of people and like someone could come in and everyone would be like awkward. That Greg guy is really problematic and he's saying weird things about fetishes and polyamory. I can't talk to him at a large kitchen table, not in the polycule.
Okay.
Parallel polyamory is when a polyamorous person has multiple partners who don't really interact with each other.
Okay.
That was interesting.
Like,
as opposed to the kitchen sink where they all come together and chat.
Like communal together.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like kind of fun. And then
kind of fun.
Polyfidelity, when a throuple, quad, or larger polycule is closed and don't see people outside of that group.
Oh, fidelity, meaning
polyfidelity.
So you could have like 5 people, but you're like, we actually aren't open beyond this.
So this is why I meant like there'd be a lot of like adjectives and stuff. It's like, so you'd be like, I'm in a quad polycule and we're polyfidelity. I can't even do it.
What is it?
Like we're poly and we
faithful.
experience polyfidelity in the sense that we are closed.
Yeah.
And then a whopping 30% of adults in North America have experienced a threesome. So this is like kind of separate.
Yeah.
At least once.
Did you know in another sense it says more than 1/5 of Americans and Canadians have had a consensual non-monogamous relationship.
Absolute slay.
Yeah, and right now 1 in 20 people are in a consensual non-monogamous relationship.
Whoa.
That's way more than I thought.
That's why everyone I meet's polyamorous.
Well, it's actually much higher in the queer community.
Oh my God.
There's a lot more acceptance.
In the queer community, it's got to be like
it's like the norm.
90%. Whenever I meet a gay guy in a closed relationship, I'm like, okay, Mormon. I shouldn't. Actually, that's a bad joke. It's like, okay, Catholic.
I was gonna say something and I forgot.
And we're done. That was a great episode.
What have you just been talking about?
The threesome. 30% of people. 30% of Americans have
It'll
had a
come back to
threesome.
me. It'll come back to me. I'm sorry.
Do you want me to continue?
Yeah, you can continue.
Okay. Well, in 2014, this was an interesting version of research I found in a study that was a bit like, slay to anyone who questions throuples. But a 2014 Pew Research report found that fewer than half of American children live with 2 parents on their first marriage.
Fewer than half.
Which is
children.
a traditional family environment because so many people are divorced and remarried, and it creates family structures that involve 3 or more parents, and that a throuple is not that off. And it was
for like a kid to be like, well, I have 3 parents.
Yeah, like the way
4.
they were like trying to do studies about throuples, they realized almost in a backwards way they were like, wow, there's so many throuples. They're like, no, it's just divorced parents. And kids being like, I have 4 parents.
Yeah.
Or like 3 parents, a single person, and it's like, that's not a throuple. A throuple, they're all
engaged with each other,
sleeping
as a
in
threesome.
one bed, maybe.
I just remembered what I wanted to say. We have to be honest about something, or rather, Greg, you have to be honest about something, and that is what inspired this episode. Was Greg's hooked on a little show called Couple to Throuple.
I was like, I really think a lot of people would think that you were gonna say that we're in a throuple.
We could be. Is anyone out there?
I want to be in a throuple. I always think like our house would be cleaner. There's 3 people to clean the house.
Yes, but I also think the dynamic. We can talk more about it later, but I think the dynamic the more people you add, I think you got to be really committed to making that dynamic work.
Okay, so to go to Couple to Throuple, which is a show on MTV that is absolute garbage.
And yet, every day he's like, oh my God, the gay couple on Couple of Throuple.
Okay, it's one of those shows like, I don't know if people who are millennials watch Temptation Island. Actually, no, people watch so much reality TV. I just don't. It's so trashy. It's so sexual that it's like kind of just like softcore porn that I'm like addicted to it. Okay, relax. I also fast forward so many of the couples to the throuples because they're so boring. And the gay guys are such a mess that they're fun to watch. But interestingly, this goes to a bit of my research on Couple to Throuple. The reason I find the show frustrating, they've added some more queer people now, is it so often is this is the research. Researchers surveyed 276 heterosexual adults in North America about threesomes versus throuples.
Okay.
So when it comes to the idea of a throuple, a lot of it is really like tied up into this idea of a threesome that comes from media stereotypes, which is usually 1 cis hetero man and 2 hetero flexible women who are all attractive, all white. And it's more about the women performing sort of like sexual
all white
acts.
a part of it?
Part of people saying that like the idea of a throuple to a lot of mainstream people is just like a almost like sexy kind of like young like white thing.
Oh, okay.
That was part of the research. They said that. They're like, people picture cisgendered, And like it's kind of like, oh, that's not what we picture because we're queer. I think we're picturing like all these like polycules and stuff. But in general, when people think of a throuple, the mainstream media, they're picturing a guy and two girls. And that is exactly what the show is doing. It's all these couples of a guy and a girl, and they're always choosing a girl as the third. And it's really like, okay, you're keeping this negative stereotype that is alive here.
Yeah, it's weird that there's not. Is there any that are two men and one woman?
Literally, they like
on the
threw
show?
a queer people in near the end. I honestly think that probably the producers were like, we're gonna get dragged, and they like showed up on the 8th episode and we're like, hi, and then they just like that.
So it was
the
two
only
guys
one.
and a girl.
Yeah, but it happened near the end. And okay, so this is the other thing about threesomes versus thruples. It was found that when there were threesomes that happened with one man and two women, the men were always, when surveyed, more sexually satisfied, would orgasm, and the women were feeling as if they were focusing on the man. In thruples, there was different research results, which found that the women actually reported being more sexually satisfied. The women had equal interest in the man and the woman, and the men found that the sex of the two women was not as satisfying.
Let me see if I'm hearing you right. So the difference being, if a couple just wanted to have a threesome, which is like a one-off,
it's very for the man,
whereas
according to research.
When it comes to an actual throuple, which would be more of a relationship,
yes, the men struggle a bit more and the women are feeling more equal. So it's sort of just making you realize there's a big difference between cis hetero people experimenting with threesomes and the concept of a throuple. And this psychological research explains that throuples are in many ways better for women. And if it's a one man
compared to the men in that throuple,
just
feeling less satisfied.
Yeah, and they call them FMF throuples.
I'm curious, and this may not be in your research. I'm curious if that would be different if there was two men and a woman.
Okay, that is in my research. So because the media often portrays, it says here, 3 cisgender, able-bodied, conventionally attractive people who are often white, and it's usually 1 man and 2 bisexual, hetero, flexible women. That is what we think about. But in the research, they found that when it is when it is thruples with 2 men and 1 woman, that's when there's the most satisfaction, and it like the relationships last the longest.
Really?
Yeah. And sometimes the men aren't even having sex with each other.
Wow.
Okay, and then
that is interesting. But it also means, to me, because of the stigma for especially men, like there's a different kind of view of like women in a threesome. I think a man who's comfortable being with, like a straight man who's comfortable being with another man and a woman, means you're like super comfortable with yourself, and probably not as annoying and like toxic, and you know what I mean? To be like,
it's a sign that you can handle that.
We're okay to have a relationship because I can be okay with, like, even if I'm hooking up with 2 people, still being mostly interested in the woman, but not feeling like it diminishes my masculinity or something weird like that because there's a man here.
So they also were saying this is very Gen X and like older millennial kind of almost baby boom. Like older people are kind of thinking about it like this because Gen Z,
about it like
with gender involved at all. They were saying that like Gen Z and millennials are like, a lot of the thruples involve people who also don't really like think about gender in the same way.
Sure, yeah.
And it creates these like much more queer and open and like...
Yeah, it's literally just like about the person.
3 people.
Yeah, it's like I actually connect with that person and that person regardless of their gender. That is so much more interesting.
And then last thing I'll say, and then we'll get into your stuff because I thought this was juicy. So in the polyamorous community, there's a term known as unicorn hunting, which is established when it's a female-male couple. So picture this kind of what I just said. Female-male couple seeking out a third in their duo.
They're the unicorn?
The unicorn hunters. So they're hunting for like a unicorn, I guess.
They're a couple looking for a third.
They're always mostly looking for a bisexual, heteroflexible woman, again, because the man is like not going to be as comfortable because like men need so much more therapy. And they usually are choosing women who don't have partners, children, or serious connections to interfere with their sort of like fantasy. And they will sometimes impose something called the 1 penis policy, in which the women are allowed to have sex with each other and their man, but the man isn't like, they can't have sex with other men.
Oh, what?
Like they're more just trying to describe that like a lot of people will throw around the word throuple. Yeah. But really when you get down into it, it's like this still very hetero, straight, cis thing where it's
it still feels super controlled. It's not necessarily a polyamorous relationship.
Exactly. Okay. So they were just saying that like when they're trying to do this research on thruples, they're realizing there's a lot of older Gen X millennial like couples who are trying to find a third, who's always a woman, who's bisexual, who doesn't have any hangups, and they're kind of like, is this what we're trying to research or not? And they're trying to be like, it's not. We're more interested in like more consensual 3 people.
Yeah, that's interesting because even from looking online, there's a lot of, maybe not a lot of discourse, but like there's a lot of things that aren't necessarily defined. Like like obviously I gave a definition of polygamy versus polyamory, but there is also like what is the word?
Wait,
consensual non-monogamous, not non-consensual, consensual non-monogamous relationships. Like there's ethical non-monogamous relationships. Like there's different terms that can describe what we're trying to say. And I think even sometimes studies and even people in these communities might define these terms differently. And that can be a challenge.
So it is so like... I'm feeling like such a boomer being like, all these terms.
No, I don't think, I think that's cool. I think terms help. I find terms really useful.
Yeah.
And it's nice to be able to define yourself and communicate through terms what you're looking for.
So if you're in an open sexual relationship, that's what I've been calling it, but it actually is ethical non-monogamy.
That's one way to describe it. Yeah. Okay. But that can actually be considered different than polyamory, in which you're actually
dating,
like you say, as a group, all okay dating other people.
Polycule.
Yeah, and perhaps in some definitions, like you said, it might be exclusive amongst a certain number of people. In others, you might have a core, but maybe you're also allowed to have other kinds of relationships outside that.
Okay, so like all the gay guys in the world that I know, every gay guy is in many ways non-monogamous, ethically non-monogamous, but only some of them are polyamorous when it's like, oh, they're dating.
I would say
others.
On the top of my head, the sort of like gay couples I can think of mostly have a primary partner, but then are open to sexual encounters outside of that, making it an open relationship, but not necessarily a polyamorous relationship.
Gotcha.
So I want to talk about more polyamory. Something I found interesting, thinking about like this becoming a topic that's been talked about. I'm going to go through the decades and tell you how many studies there were. And we're going to see the boom that's happening right now.
Let's go. Throuples are in, y'all.
So in the 70s, there were only 10 studies looking into polyamory.
Boo. And that's surprising because
70s were also like
free love
after the 60s. Yeah. Then the 80s, 3. Even more boo.
Yeah, no, the 80s are so repressed.
Then the 90s, 0.
Okay, the 90s is full Clinton, oil, nuclear
They're just like,
family.
we're not even going to acknowledge this.
Yeah.
The aughts, if that's how you say it, 12.
That's like the emo. It's because there's emo people all of a sudden.
We're polyamorous.
And they're like, oh my God, My Chemical Romance is so polyamory.
The 2010s, 94.
That's surprising.
So we're getting a boom.
It was a pretty like boring
And then
time.
This meta-analysis I found went from 2000 to 2023, 90 studies in that 3-year period.
People are,
so obviously, and from Google Trends and stuff, you can search like the terms around polyamory, or consensual non-monogamy. These kind of things have like skyrocketed.
Yeah.
Even in comparison to the word threesome and things like that. It's polyamory that people are more and more interested relative to every other search term.
So like, should this episode be called like polyamory or throuples?
I think it can be both.
Or like, because people are interested in throuples is more narrow. People are interested in polyamory, but throuples are just like a funny thing that we're seeing more because it's the most visual. It's like, oh, there's 3 of them. Slay.
Oh, you can call it whatever we want.
Yeah.
It's about both. I think throuples are a form of polyamory.
Okay, so should we go into a throuple? Okay, the thing about couple to throuple that's really funny.
You're asking me this on Sidenote podcast?
Yes.
Like, are you proposing to me?
Well, I always have been
someone sits down, we pull up a third chair.
Honestly, I have always been saying that we should be in a throuple but it is rude, and it's just because I want my house cleaned.
Yeah, you can't just
and that's
like have
fully
someone,
awful.
Like, you can't say that.
Yeah, that's like actually awful. Like, if the person never heard me say that, they'd be like, I don't want to be in a
throuple.
throuple
That's like
with
an
you.
insane thing to say.
Yeah, no,
out loud in public.
I know, and I'm literally like, I want them to cook. Like,
Great.
It's bad.
Well, yeah, neither of us are like great homekeepers.
We're not homekeepers, and we're gay. It's like we have the worst gay traits. Like, I just want a gay guy with the traits that like I want them to like. I've never like washed a pillowcase. Like,
Okay, well, I have.
That is such a lie, Mitch. Do not.
You think I've never washed a pillowcase?
The last time you washed a pillowcase? Because I actually did it recently because I did think to myself, wow, we have never. When's the last time?
My pillowcases?
Not the bed ones, the gay ones on the couch that are for decoration. penetration is what I mean.
Okay.
That's what I meant by gay guy. Sorry, we do wash our pillowcases. We sleep
I was
on.
like, that's crazy,
disgusting.
Greg.
That is very straight energy. I'm saying like the gay pillows, the ones that are like
ornamental pillows.
Exactly. I want to be in a throuple so that a gay guy will be aware of the ornamental pillows.
You're right. You're right about this. And the only time I've ever washed them is when I actually spill something on them. Then I'll throw it into my laundry. But otherwise, I'm
no.
like,
That's I mean.
I
I
don't
mean, like I
wash
want a gay
those.
guy who buys candles. Like I want my house to be like.
well, if you're listening or watching, and you buy candles and wash pillowcases and maybe make dinner every now and then, you could be eligible to join our throuple.
Because our relationship has gone in and out of monogamy, which I think is super cool and fun. But the actual idea of like throuple and stuff, we've never really actually explored.
Yeah, because I think... but it takes a lot of time and effort.
Yeah.
Like I think it's not something you can just do on a whim. I mean, maybe it's different if you're single because it's fun to like, you can be dating multiple people at one time, but like we're in a 17-year relationship.
So it's unfair.
Well, no, I don't. I wasn't going to say that. I mean, maybe it's
It
unfair.
is if they show up and I'm like, okay, can you clean and wash our pillows?
And I just mean like we know what it takes to make a single person relationship work.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine like if you're going to bring somebody else in as a throuple, how much work you need to dedicate to like, and the kinds of dynamics.
To like make them comfortable?
Make them comfortable and make it work and make it healthy is all I mean.
Yeah.
So think about like the kinds of like therapy and communication we've had to learn to do just to accommodate our differences. If like think about just the math of it.
Yeah.
If you add in another variable, it's exponential, right? So then that's why I think even like a quad, it's amazing that people can do it. This is like definitely no shade. It just is like most of like, and also we run a business together. That's a relationship on its own. So, you know, now we have a bit more time. Maybe we can afford.
We have a
the
lot
time.
more time now. So if you want to be in a throuple with us,
send us a
reach
voice
out.
note.
And I'm so sorry, I won't make you just look after us.
asapscience.com/chat.
Yeah. But like.
Pitch yourself. We'll put it in comment corner.
I do think it's interesting because in Couple to Throuple, this epic Emmy-nominated show that truly is like, please, no one watch it. The single people always have a really they seem actually more well adjusted, and they have this interesting way of being like I'm looking for a couple. Mm-hmm. And at first I was like, I didn't believe them, but then I was like, that's actually kind of fun.
Yeah,
like they seem young and they're just like, and they're really like aware that they're going into the couple.
Like another couple.
And they're like, some of them are like, you guys are not ready. The gay guys are not ready. The gay guys are a mess. And the cute, actually it's like whoever that guy is, like reach out.
The one who like
the one who's single,
them.
I'm like such a crush on. But he's like, cause he's cool. He's literally like, hey, you guys aren't ready. Peace. Whereas like, I do feel like you could be a single person, go into a couple and start to be like, oh, they're ready and it's working. And you could see how it could like work.
Mm-hmm. But also remember lots of throuples start not from a couple adding. Right?
Wait, like 3 people meet at a bar?
Yeah, or
Okay,
maybe they
so.
like individually have interesting relationships and decide to like do it together. And
they said a lot of throuples are like a polycule breaking off as if it's like a microorganism and like a protein, like sort of like
that's
like
how they
siphoning
described
off.
it.
No, yeah, they said that like
this your interpretation.
No, it said a lot of polycules can end up as throuples because you're kind of in this like large fun dating all these people, and then you're like actually slay to these 3.
Yeah, this is like giving Survivor alliances. It's like every big alliance has a core alliance, and everyone's got their version of where they're like, well, you know, it's like us at the core of this, and then everyone else is. But everyone's got a different version of that. You got to make sure like someone who you think's in your core doesn't think they're the core.
Okay, you'd be really good at a throuple because of like Big Brother and Survivor.
No, but that feels like not a healthy way to look at relationships.
Actually, okay, this one research, I just cross-eyed and fall over. One part about psychological research of throuples found that there's a thing that can happen called triangulation. And this is a sign of an issue where one person, because of tension between one other, starts to confide in the other and talk, quote unquote, shit about the third. And they were like, whenever triangulation happens, that's when you need to like
a risky
sit
time.
Down the 3 of you, go to therapy. And I was like, whoa, that
makes sense.
So
because instead of it now being a friend you're ranting to, it's someone in the relationship, which obviously has so much more weight.
I mean, you can't do that in a double.
Yeah, you either use a therapist or a friend.
Exactly. And then
they have no stake in it.
There's no stake.
But if you're in a throuple or even a quad, if you're like communicating about another person, it's like that can change the power dynamic.
Throuples, you got to look out for your triangulation.
Okay, I'm going to go into a little bit of my research on more broadly polyamory. I want to say I found an amazing meta-analysis. You know, when you just like are doing a bit of research and then you hit the gold mine. I don't know if on YouTube I link out my studies. I don't know if you do it on the pod, like our sources and stuff.
Yeah, we do.
It's so big because I'm only going to go over some of the things because it was just like it was looking at like 200 and something studies and breaking them down by categories of their findings. So I'm going to talk a little bit about like the relationship aspect of them, but there was stuff about like the general studies on the perception of polyamory and stuff like that. And there was studies on like the sexual outcomes of these couples and stuff like that. So I just thought I'd spit out some of these facts that I found interesting if you're down with that.
Imagine I said no.
Well, the way
Mitch.
you're looking at me is I was like,
no, Mitch.
Are you here?
We're going to do a separate episode about knowing yourself. Tell me the information.
Okay. Compared to monogamous relationships, people in consensual non-monogamous relationships are either as satisfied or more satisfied with their relationships.
Yeah, slay.
They are as committed or more committed to their relationships.
Wow.
This is all compared to just people in monogamous relationships.
Wow.
They're more satisfied with the nature of communication and openness in their relationships.
That makes sense because you kind of are like forced to communicate or else you got triangulation and things fall apart.
Polyamorous people and those in open relationships report less jealousy and greater feelings of compersion. Never heard this word before, which it just means the feelings of joy for their partner's happiness with other partners.
Compersion. Okay, everyone stop what you're doing and make a notes app. Compersion. The feeling of happiness of your partner being with someone else.
Like the joy they get, you receiving joy from them getting that joy from someone else.
And it could be friend, it could be sex, it could be...
This was the definition the study gave. I wonder if that word's applicable to like, if I were to watch you have fun with a friend.
Like you, it's like, oh my God, you're playing Fortnite with our other friend. I'm like, oh my God, I'm experiencing so much compersion as you shoot them and laugh. Or is it like, we're ethically non-monogamous and like you're getting a blowjob from someone and I'm compersioning the Boots house down? Like, where's this compersion?
I'm feeling compersion right now.
It's such a good word because it's like compression, but not. And everyone would be like, I think you mean something. And we know it's compersion. Look it up.
Okay. Looking at a sample of people over the age of 55, those who were non-monogamous reported being significantly happier than the same population of adults who were monogamous, even compared to those who did swinging. Was like the thing.
Okay, yeah. So, wow.
Swinging
could be endless.
That's a never term. Like swinging is like
swinging?
another. It's like if we were to just want to have sex. I think it is like
Actually,
threesomes.
Swinging is maybe.
But I don't know the full definition, but
swinging is maybe more what they were saying with those like look out for the unicorn hunters.
Yeah, like
swinging
exactly.
Unicorn hunter.
You're like as a couple deciding let's have sexual experiences with others. It could be one, it could be two, but it's less
fun.
about like your love. Now, something interesting. There's something called hierarchical partnerships. So this means having a primary partner who is like your main partner over your kind of
number
other
one.
ones.
Okay, wait. Say so. You have a primary partner.
Like there's forms of polyamory where you might be like, here's the person that's like my main partner.
We're in a throuple, but like you're the third.
Yeah, or like we're in a quad, but like two of us are here and two of us are there, and like we all kind of interact separate. People in non-hierarchical partnerships had greater satisfaction than those in hierarchical. So it's like better to have the love shared evenly in terms of relationship satisfaction than to like have little groups inside. Is kind of what it was.
Yeah, so like when that polycule is sitting down at their kitchen table polyamory meeting, it's like y'all better all be enjoying the hors d'oeuvres
absolutely
the same.
Equal.
Yeah, because you know if we're like in the main a bit more.
Perhaps it's different with depending on the number of people. The only other facts I wanted to go over were some of the perception. There's lots of studies not only on the impact of perception, like on people in polyamorous relationships, which is generally negative, and that impacts, much like it does for other marginalized groups, people who are polyamorous feel the judgment of society on them. Often, if they don't, it's because they're not telling a lot of people that they're in like open or polyamorous relationships. People view polyamorous people as more promiscuous, immoral, perverted, untrustworthy, that they would have higher rates of STIs. Like, these are all predictable.
Yeah.
I wanted to put these after because we just talked about all the positive things where it's like, we know that's not true. We know they're having satisfying, in fact,
good
higher rates of
relationships,
satisfaction.
but they're having to deal with
this
like
is the
oppression.
perception of the more general population.
Yeah, it's like, like I actually think I'm like fully like a Christian, like right-wing person when I think about it, because like my instinct was to make fun of a polycule in Brooklyn.
Exactly. But here we now know that many of those people are more satisfied than monogamous people.
Yeah.
But the perception remains that people look at those relationships as more likely to fail, being unsustainable, less satisfactory, less romantic, less efficacious.
The studies show the opposite, folks.
The studies did show that the queer populations are much more accepting than heterosexuals.
Like, are all in open relationships.
And cisgender gay men are all in polycules.
If you score higher on openness to experience, and have less restrictive social sexual orientation, like you're not as sexually repressed, you're more likely to be happy and okay with open
is water
relationships.
wet?
And then let's see, I have one more. Oh yeah, most people in the general public reduce polyamory to just sex, but the majority of polyamorous people actually don't see sex as the main thing. It was like they actually see it as a way to be intimate. They emphasize interpersonal feelings,
And they
affection,
love compersion. They compersion all day, every day. And if you don't know what compersion is, you need to go back in this podcast and learn.
About 10 minutes ago, we ranted.
I'd say like 4 or 5.
All of this led to, I've told you the stats, but it all required clear, ongoing communication, consent, respect, flexibility, and prioritizing emotional work. So if you are interested in whether it's a throuple or polyamory, know that it takes work. If you want to have that satisfaction of these
So maybe that's why we're not in a throuple, because we're always like, we're so busy.
Lazy.
Yeah, that's the better word. It's like not busy. Actually, it's lazy for sure. No, it's true. It's like, I just like picture us like sitting down at like a table at like a bar with like the third, and it's just like, oh God, we gotta chat about like, although that could be fun. Like, and then now that I think about it, I'm like, kombucha girl, like, oh, actually, like it's like, at least we use an app to bring up new conversations for ourselves.
Exactly. I think in the right world, that person wouldn't be this is a chore.
True.
It would be I'm actually really excited and I'm so comfortable around them that I don't feel like I have to turn it on always, right? Like, but I guess
it's Bad Bunny.
Okay. So, if a little person named Bad Bunny happens to be listening,
Benito from Puerto Rico
and is wondering after Kendall Jenner, he's interested in 2 gay guys from Toronto. We might be open to that polycule.
Get him to send us a voice note on Sidenote. Imagine you woke up one day and there was a voice note from Benito.
I'd throw up, I'd shit myself, I'd flip a table, and I'd probably ruin whatever software was involved, and I'd never even
Do you think you'd be able to respond ever?
No.
Would you just be like, I can't even address this?
Wait. What? I'm like, actually, my brain's going crazy. If he was like, I listened to Sidenote, I would like run into the nearest lake and maybe drown myself, actually. Yeah, no, I don't think I'd be able to respond.
And you just leave it forever.
I would just do like
Okay, so maybe Benito, I know you're about to click record. Don't send it.
Actually, Benito, don't.
This is my primary partner and I don't want them to drown
I
lake.
I will just go to the nearest lake and drown myself. Okay, so now there's a book called Sex at Dawn, which is all about kind of how we have like, through Christianity and agriculture, that's always the issue when it comes to like modern science, created this like nuclear family concept that was never the case. Because prior to agriculture, we were in these very, open, large, nomadic groups going around, sharing the wealth, sharing the food, and apparently sharing the sex, blah, blah, blah. And they talk about this thing called the Flintstoneization of human prehistory, that like people will, it's like kind of funny, but like picture the Flintstones, like people don't really have the capacity to think outside of just like, oh, it was probably like a man defending his pregnant wife while they like, and like even the Flintstones, I'm like, yeah, that is so funny. They're like, prehistoric, but they like go to work with a briefcase, like,
and they're like in marriages.
Yeah, exactly. Like just that, like people have like a hard time understanding that this idea of like polyamory is not this crazy thing. That
No,
like maybe the
and
crazy thing is the nuclear family.
Yeah, and even marriages, if you go back not that long ago, like the idea of a love marriage, even still today in some cultures, is not the norm. Like a love marriage is actually very unique, and originally marriages, as far as I understand, I'm not a historian, were like literally alliances to connect. It was like a way to connect families and make a subunit of a community that's smaller than like a town, or like smaller than the group, to have like subgroups within that.
Yeah,
the families
and
combined.
they blame agriculture, which like is always fun, like a fun culprit for all of our issues. But it's like, yeah, like agriculture happened, picket fences were built, and like the, you know, even capitalism, it all created this like sort of idea, which I find interesting, because when I do picture the polycule in Brooklyn, like I do picture people being like anti-capitalism. Like there's something about it that I am like, oh yeah, I do want to be polyamorous.
Well, there's
like,
something very nice about, like, I have a desire to join like a commune. I don't know if I need to be in love with everyone, but although that would be nice.
Yeah, you also want to be in a cult.
Well, okay.
Same thing.
It's not the same thing.
Okay.
But I think
you could be in a
it's just
polycule.
you're being the people who perceive polyamory.
No, I
as
know.
bad.
I know I am. I know
think
I
communes
am.
can be very beautiful. It's all about
Yeah.
helping each other and sharing
Yeah.
resources and not needing to lock yourself up in one nuclear family and think
No, I
that
know.
you can do
I'm, like,
everything.
actually
We
Christian.
are literally isolated and separated and destroyed as a society, and I think
Yeah.
communes are a really nice
Okay.
way to bring us
But
back to taking care of others.
But sometimes communes always end up as cults.
Sometimes, always.
We did an episode on cults. Okay, we'll go back to that. Okay, no, I know.
Actually,
I'm the
let's
problematic
do an episode on
Christian one.
communes, because I don't know enough. I'm sure there's lots of really beautiful communes. Remember, what did we watch?
I'm just
for-
scared about you learning more and then just like never seeing you again.
If I could make one, I would. I could make one.
I see that for you in the future. I
But I
love how
don't-
you're like
no,
slowly
but
getting to what I've always thought you would
I don't
do.
want it to be weird, though. I don't want to be like the leader. I just want to
It doesn't have to be weird.
like, especially if and when we have kids, I'm like, it would be so nice.
co-op. Do a Brooklyn
Okay,
co-op.
that's all.
Sorry to Brooklyn. Like I know I alienate everyone, but now I'm alienating Brooklyn. But I am a really horrible Christian person who is really, I get what you're saying. I am like talking about polycules and polyamory as this like kind of like thing.
Yeah.
I don't even want to continue with the adjectives I would use because it's just like canceled all the way to hell. But I do think it's rad, and obviously I'm also anti-capitalist and like
Yeah, it's super progressive to be able to also overcome the structures of society and be able to, like, sometimes when, like, as a queer person who's very surrounded by this, when I look at some straight people, I can see how chained they are by these structures that make them very sad and unhappy.
Yeah.
And I then can see a lot of queer friends who are like liberated from the expectations of society because they're able to say like, I don't have to fit in that box. And actually I can find out what makes me happy and makes the people around me happy. I think we're all in a lot of those chains that we can't see, like us included.
Yeah.
And I think many people are trying to explore those chains and finding keys to unshackle themselves from the expectations of society.
And that's why they end up being these goddamn unicorn hunters. It's like, don't unicorn hunt, be an equal threesome. And if you are a hetero cisgendered couple who's straight, you better be looking for an extra man. Looking for an extra woman, that's a red flag.
Oh, true.
my
Yeah.
folks.
Yeah. Red flag.
But I will say that I like am absolutely like
I'd love to hear anyone who's in a polyamorous or throuple or anything message in about their experience.
Yes.
Send a voice note. And also, I'd love to do an episode on communes. And if you're somebody who has experiences in a co-op or like, I don't mean a commune, a cult. I just mean like
No, I
a
know.
community that is like, because I think it's so nice. And even with our friends, like now a bunch of them are starting to have their families and a bunch live near. And I'm like, how do we work together? We're
like,
all
we
friends.
might as well just like live in
help
one
each
home.
other.
Okay.
We don't have to live in one home. But
Listen to this. It's about the polyamory and queering of physical space and the concept of architecture being designed as a nuclear home for a non-polyamorous family.
So which side are you on now?
No, it's me. I'm an absolute flip-flopper. I've actually been thinking in my head about how I'm like, screw straight people. They're so repressed, but at the same, it's all
You're the
balance.
bro
But
is
at the
bro.
same times, whenever like there's
You
like a
are
bunch
a
of
bro.
polyamorous people together, I'm like, okay, y'all need to relax because obviously straight people have a lot going on for them too. Or like I don't know, I just don't know where I am ever, but
You're Goldilocks.
Yeah.
You just think that you are perfect.
No, I don't. I think that whenever someone is claiming that their thing is good, I'm always questioning
That's
it.
good to be skeptical.
But then it just leaves me questioning everything and having a pointless existence. No, but okay. So there's queer architecture, and part of it is like, I thought it was interesting. It's like homes are designed for nuclear families. There's usually like the master bedroom with like the bed for two people, and then the like 2 bedrooms for the kids. And it's like,
what would be a queer design?
I was trying to look it up because it was like an annoying article where it was like all they do is be like, we need a queer spaces, and it's like, give an example, hun. And they weren't. And then I just got fed up. It was like a room with like a double king size bed and a
pride flag.
Yeah, like a pride flag, and like it was just so funny. But it made me think, okay, that is interesting. Like
Megami, protect queer art.
Yeah, exactly, protect queer art. Like a polycule is probably like, we need more. It's like, no, you just need like a mansion, I guess. But like, I thought it was interesting that there are like queer people who are thinking about the design of space. And
That's
how
so
it interacts
interesting.
with, like
yeah.
nuclear.
I'd love to
families.
learn more about what. Those are things that like we can't see because we're just so ingrained with the way our world is structured. But I'd love to know what it means to queer.
Yeah, it was an annoying article that only
spaces.
asked questions like, what are the implications of non-monogamy on the conception, arrangement, and shaping of domestic interiors? It's like, answer that. You're writing the article. It was a cool question, but sometimes it's like,
At
is
least
it a
try,
triangle room with doors on
Right.
either side? Because like, that's fun. Okay, then another thing is that in Ontario, up to 6 parents can be with consent named on the birth certificate of a kid.
Whoa.
So
Wait.
it's kind of like go
Really?
off. Yeah.
As their actual parents.
Yeah, and in Australia has, like Jeff has.
You melt. You can't even handle that. Australians maybe did something better.
I'm
Is
like,
that what's
yeah,
with it?
Australia coming in with the heat. Australia law has stuck at 2 parents.
Oh, so still bad.
But they're now like due to like the High Court of Mason versus Parsons, HCA 212, they've left open the possibility that more than 2 parents could be recognized under the Family Law Act. So like other things in Australia, it's taking a slow time to get to the progress.
I would literally marry an Australian just to get an Australian Survivor.
Well, why don't we Okay, call in if you're interested in being in a throuple with us in Toronto and are Australian, so that.
Well, I might have to leave you if they're only allowed 2.
No, there's a Family Law Act. They just said.
We don't need a kid each, actually. Like, I'm sure we can all.
No, and you guys can do your family law. Actually, no, I think we could know what we're going to do.
I'm desperate. I will actually marry an Australian.
Also,
it's the best version of Survivor that ever existed.
And that will be your ability to get on, is that we will be the first throuple legally bound in Australia.
And we'll actually change the course of history.
So, like when they're
and then
like,
I'll be on the show. Being
yeah,
like,
when they're like, oh my God, you're Mitch, because like you're like, you've tried all the things and it's not working. So, but you've never tried the fact that you're the first legal throuple in Australia. That will be your story.
That'll get me.
And there'll be like a cut to like me and said person like chopping up like a zucchini while you're like boiling pasta, and everyone will be like, oh my God, they're so progressive.
Wow, it works.
So then this is another thing. In 2017, Ian Jenkins, Alan Mayfield, and Jeremy Hodges made history when they became the first family in California to list 3 fathers on a birth certificate. Gay throuple. And it showed like it was just explaining like how they did it, and then it's been working so far, and the children were utterly unfazed by their family structure, as the throuple's daughter Piper proudly told a classmate, "You have 2 parents? I have 3." Mic drop. So I was like, okay, that's cool. Like it's happening. Like people
But
are raising
Piper
kids.
more is not better than less. Actually, I have a full video called "Why Subtraction is Better Than Addition."
Yeah, and like 3 gay men in a home. Piper, plug your ears. There's gonna be a lot of chatting. New Ariana Grande album drops. There's gonna be screaming. Okay, so yeah, I guess Thruple Slay. We are auditioning for
send
people
in
to
your
be
resume,
ours.
send in your voice note, and
polyamorous
especially if you're Australian,
relationships.
you win.
Yeah.
So you can also be a female from
Actually-
Australia, and I'll marry you.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing is that like everyone in Australia hates me because I like talk shit about them all the time. So this
So it can
could
just be
hard.
me though. Like we don't need Greg
It
to be
sounds
part
like
of the
you
picture.
just want to kind of date anyone alone from Australia to get on Australian Survivor.
Not date, marry.
Marry,
I need
sorry.
I need like
Marry.
citizenship.
Yeah. Wow.
I've
this
looked
is
into this. You
complicated.
either have to be like living there for like 5 years to get one of those like whatever permit things.
It's gonna be crazy when you drag me to Australia after I've dragged them to hell to live for 5 years just so you can get on the show.
And the show will probably be canceled by then.
Sad. No, okay, but amorous relationships have
Yeah, I
a
think
lot
it's-
of positive to
Yeah,
them.
I think that's like people can, especially if you're coming from being in one, like can feel proud about that.
And if I've offended you, which I likely have, acehavescience.com/chat. I'm open to hearing like truly being dragged through all hell.
Okay, let's take a break and then we'll come back for what'd you learn this week's. Yeah.
Slurp.
All right.